Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. Galactic Empire's biggest mistake crossing Baba Yaga's family. Commander Vextora of the Galactic Hegemony stood on the bridge of his warship, the inevitable conquest, his forearms folded neatly behind his back as he gazed out at the small blue-green planet through the view screen. Earth, as the locals called it, such a boring name for such a troublesome world. These humans, he clicked his mandibles in annoyance, have rejected our generous offer of vassalage for the third time. The High Council has authorized punitive measures. First Officer Krell nodded her crested head. The Intelligence Division recommends targeting their young. Humans are absurdly protective of their offspring. A demonstration will break their spirit. Vextora's compound eyes gleamed with cruel satisfaction. Select a remote settlement, something isolated. We don't want a full-scale war yet. There's a place called Coldridge Valley in the Northern Territories. Krell brought up a holographic map. Population, 892. Isolated mountain community. Perfect. Vexer purred. Prepare the dropships. I want this done quickly and cleanly. Lieutenant Nix, the youngest officer on the bridge, shifted uncomfortably. Commander, our intel suggests that one of the human diplomatic envoys came from this region. The one who refused to kneel. Perhaps we should. The one who spat at Ambassador Zegath. Vextora interrupted. Even better. Let them see what defiance costs. He turned to his communications officer. Send word to the High Council. The humans will receive their lesson today. No one noticed the tiny blinking light on the communications panel, indicating that their supposedly secure channel had been compromised. The raid on Coldridge Valley took less than 20 minutes. The Hegemony Elite Vanquisher units descended from the pre-dawn sky in stealth dropships, their armor gleaming dully in the moonlight. The humans had primitive detection systems, easily bypassed. They had primitive weapons, easily countered. They had primitive defenses, easily overcome. What they didn't have was mercy. Captain Dries led the main assault team, moving house to house with brutal efficiency. Remember, take the young ones. The Council wants them alive for processing. His soldiers nodded, their helmet visors hiding whatever emotions might have flickered across their alien faces. Some were veterans of a dozen subjugations, some were on their first deployment. None questioned the orders. The humans fought back, of course. They always did, with hunting rifles and shotguns, and, in one memorable case, a sharpened gardening trowel. Captain Dries lost 3 soldiers to unexpected resistance, which was 3 more than he had budgeted for. This made him angry. Anger made him sloppy. When they reached the large cabin at the edge of the forest, Dries was in no mood for subtlety. Breach and clear. Stun the adults. Secure any offspring. The cabin door splintered under concentrated weapons fire. Dries' team surged in, weapons ready. Inside was a human female standing calmly in the center of the room. Behind her, 2 small humans, children, huddled together. Please, the woman said, her voice steady despite the weapons pointed at her face. They're just kids. Take me instead. Dries laughed, the sound harsh through his translator. We take all of you. The young ones go to the processing ships. You go to the interrogation division. The woman's eyes, a strange piercing blue, seemed to look right through his armor. My name is Eleanor Blackwood. I was Earth's diplomatic envoy to your council. I'm giving you one chance to leave my children and walk away. Dries recognized the name. This was the human who had refused to accept vassalage terms, who had told the High Council that humans did not kneel. His mandibles clicked in pleasure. Seize them, he ordered. When his soldiers moved forward, the woman, Eleanor, made no move to resist, but she spoke 3 words so quietly that Dries' audio enhancers barely picked them up. Orbital strike incoming. Dries hesitated for a fraction of a second, wondering if this was some kind of bluff. That hesitation saved his life. as it positioned him just behind Sergeant Casey's when the cabin's roof exploded inward, not from an orbital strike, but from something almost as devastating. A single human male dropping through the ceiling with what appeared to be primitive chemical explosives strapped to his body. The resulting detonation killed 3 of Dree's soldiers instantly. 2 more were critically injured. Dries himself was thrown against the wall, his armor cracked, internal alarms blaring. Through smoke and debris, he saw the woman grab her children and vanish through a hidden door in the floor. Pursue. Dries coughed out, struggling to his feet. All units, the targets are escaping. Back on the inevitable conquest, Commander Vextora watched the operation unfolding through helmet feeds. Things had gone smoothly at first, too smoothly, perhaps, which should have been his first warning. Now warning klaxons were sounding throughout the ship. "Report," he barked. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the planet's surface." The sensor officer's voice was tight with alarm. They're launching, sir." "Launching what?" "Their missile technology is primitive. Their space force is negligible." "Not missiles, sir. People. Hundreds of individual human life signs accelerating toward orbit. Toward us." Vextora's mandibles clacked in disbelief. "That's impossible. They don't have personal flight technology. Show me." The main screen shifted to show a real-time view of Earth's atmosphere. And rising through it, like a swarm of angry insects, were hundreds of small heat signatures, each one roughly the size of a human being. "Magnify," Vextora ordered, his voice dropping to a whisper. The image zoomed in on one of the ascending figures. It was, impossibly, a human woman. She wore no spacesuit, no breathing apparatus. Instead, she was clad in what appeared to be some kind of ceremonial armor, sleek black plates over a bodysuit adorned with glowing red symbols. Most bizarre of all, she was astride what looked like a cleaning implement, a broom, that left a trail of blue fire in its wake. "Impossible," Vextora breathed. "Check your sensors. This must be some kind of electronic warfare." "Sensors confirmed, sir. They're real. And they're angry." Before Vextora could respond, the ship shuddered violently. "What was that? Are they attacking?" "No, sir." The tactical officer's voice had risen several octaves. "Something just materialized inside our ship, in the main hangar bay." "Materialized? Nothing can penetrate our shields." It's a structure, sir. A small dwelling made of organic materials." The internal security feed from a hangar bay appeared on screen. Sitting in the middle of the vast space, surrounded by startled hegemony troops, was what appeared to be a small house. It stood on what looked like giant bird legs, and despite the impossibility of the situation, it appeared to be made of wood and stone. Smoke curled from a crooked chimney. As they watched, the door of the house swung open. A single human female emerged. She was tall and lean, with silver-streaked black hair pulled back from a face lined with both age and fury. She wore no armor, no spacesuit, just a simple black outfit that rippled like liquid shadow. When she spoke, her voice somehow carried through the ship's communication systems, overriding all security protocols. "My name is Eleanor Blackwood. You may know me as Earth's diplomatic envoy, but I have another title. One much older than your hegemony." Her blue eyes seemed to stare directly at Vextora through the screen. "On Earth, I am known as Baba Yaga." "Who is this?" Vextora demanded. "How is she broadcasting on our secure channels?" Eleanor continued as if she hadn't heard him. "You came to my home. You threatened my children. You killed my neighbors." With each statement, the temperature on the bridge seemed to drop. "Now I have come to collect the debt you owe." "Security teams to the hangar bay," Vextora shouted. "All troops converge and eliminate the intruder." On the screen, they watched as the hegemony soldiers surrounded the human woman, weapons raised. She didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't show any sign of concern. She just smiled, The cold, terrible smile that reminded Vextora of the apex predators from his homeworld. "You should have run when I gave you the chance," she said. And then she opened her arms wide, and the soldiers opened fire, and everything went to hell. Captain Dries had lost track of the human woman and her children. The cabin had contained a hidden tunnel system that branched off in multiple directions, and his remaining troops were scattered, disoriented, and though none would admit it, frightened. "Regroup at the extraction point," he ordered through the tactical net. "Bring whatever prisoners you've secured." The only response was static. That was concerning. More concerning was the sudden darkness that seemed to be falling over the valley, despite the chronometer indicating it was nearly dawn. "Command, this is Captain Dries," he broadcast on the emergency channel. "Request immediate extraction. The operation has encountered unexpected resistance." More static. Then breaking through. "Under attack. Unknown weapons. Cannot maintain orbit." Dries felt a cold sensation in his thorax, something his species rarely experienced. Fear. Pure, primitive fear. A soft voice spoke behind him. "Are you afraid, Captain?" He whirled, weapon raised, to find one of the human children standing there. The smaller one, a female, if he recalled human dimorphism correctly. She looked perhaps 7 or 8 cycles old, but her eyes were wrong. Too old, too knowing. "Where is your mother?" Dries demanded, his weapon trained on the small human. The child smiled. It was not a child's smile. Everywhere. And suddenly, Dries became aware of the sounds coming from all around him in the forest. Screams. His soldiers were screaming, not in anger or battle fury, but in terror, pure, unmitigated terror. "What is happening?" he demanded. "What are you doing?" The child's form seemed to shimmer like heat rising from desert sand. "I'm not doing anything, Captain. I'm just a child, remember? A helpless human child." Dries' training took over. He fired his weapon, the stun setting at maximum. The energy pulse passed right through the child's form, dispersing harmlessly against a tree trunk. "That wasn't very nice," the child said, her voice suddenly deepening, becoming adult, becoming familiar. "I offered you a chance to walk away." The child's form shifted, blurred, and resolved into the woman from the cabin, Eleanor Blackwood. Except now she was floating several inches above the ground, and her eyes were solid black, and shadows seemed to cling to her like loyal pets. "What are you?" Dries whispered. "I told your commander. I am Baba Yaga." She tilted her head, studying him like a curious specimen. "But that's just a title, a role. What I am is much simpler." Her smile was terrible to behold. "I am a mother, and you threatened my children." Dries raised his weapon again, switching to lethal settings, but before he could fire, the ground beneath him erupted. Roots, impossibly fast-growing tree roots, burst from the soil and wrapped around his legs, his torso, his arms. In seconds, he was immobilized, his weapon dropped uselessly to the ground. Eleanor approached, her movements fluid and predatory. "Your people thought humans were primitive because we lack certain technologies, but we have other gifts, older gifts." The roots tightened painfully around Dries' body. "Magic isn't real," he gasped. "This is some kind of technology, some trick." "Oh, it's real," Eleanor replied. "It's just been sleeping for a very long time. Your attack woke it up." She leaned closer, and he could smell something strange on her breath, like burning leaves and winter frost. "You killed 23 children in Coldridge Valley before you reached my home. Do you know what happens when innocent blood is spilled on ancient ground?" Dries couldn't answer. The roots were constricting his breathing apparatus. "Old packs are awakened," Eleanor whispered. "Old powers stir, and old debts come due." Above them, the sky had gone completely dark despite the time of day. But it wasn't empty darkness. Shapes moved within it, human shapes, hundreds of them, circling like carrion birds. My sisters have been waiting a long time for a worthy hunt, Eleanor said, looking up at the aerial host. The sisterhood of the broom doesn't get called together very often these days. They're eager to stretch their wings. A voice crackled through Dree's helmet. Commander Vextora, sounding panicked. All ground forces, return to ships immediately. We are under attack by unknown hostile forces. The inevitable conquest is losing orbital stability. Emergency evacuation protocols. The transmission cut off in a burst of static. Eleanor smiled at Dree's helmet. Your commander is having a bad day. He met my mother. Your mother. Drees managed to gasp. The original Baba Yaga. The first of us. She's been asleep for centuries, but it turns out threatening her grandchildren was enough to wake her up. Eleanor patted Dree's armored cheek, almost tenderly. Family is everything to us. You see. With a gesture of her hand, the roots loosened slightly, allowing Drees to breathe. I'm going to let you go, Captain. Do you know why? He shook his head, too terrified to speak. Because someone needs to tell the story. Someone needs to go back to your hegemony and explain exactly why they should never, ever come back to Earth. Her eyes, now returned to their human blue, bored into his. Can you do that for me? Drees nodded frantically. Good. With another gesture, the roots released him completely. He collapsed to the ground, his armor systems reporting multiple fractures and contusions. Your dropship is still functional, 1 kilometer north. If you hurry, you might escape before the real fun starts. Drees stumbled to his feet, swaying unsteadily. What real fun? Eleanor's smile was the most terrifying thing he had ever seen. The part where we hunt down every ship in your invasion fleet. The part where we follow them back to your staging areas. The part where the full sisterhood of the broom introduces ourselves to your High Council. She made a shooing motion with her hand. Run along now, and remember to tell them exactly who sent you. Tell them Baba Yaga is awake, and she's very, very cross. Drees ran, his tactical systems plotting the fastest route to the dropship. Behind him, he heard a sound that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The sound of a human woman laughing. From orbit, the inevitable conquest was in chaos. The bridge was filled with smoke and emergency lighting, and Commander Vextora was frantically trying to coordinate a retreat. Main engines are offline, the engineering officer reported. We're operating on auxiliary power only. What about the rest of the fleet? Vextora demanded. Scattered, under attack. The human females on the flying implements. They're somehow able to maneuver in vacuum. They're targeting our drive systems with some kind of energy weapons. Impossible, Vextora muttered, though at this point, he was beginning to reconsider his definition of the word. What about the house? The intruder. Security teams are not responding, the tactical officer reported. Internal sensors show. Sir, they show the hangar bay is empty. The structure has vanished. A cold, terrible laugh echoed through the bridge. Every officer froze, looking around for the source. Not vanished, a voice said, elderly, feminine, with a thick accent none of the translator systems could quite parse. Just moved. Vextora spun around to find an ancient human female sitting in his command chair. She was wrinkled like old leather, with wild white hair and eyes, so deeply set, they appeared to be nothing but shadow. She wore layers of tattered cloth in blacks and reds, and her gnarled hands rested on a gnarled walking stick. Who are you? Vextora demanded, his hand moving to his sidearm. How did you get on my bridge? The old woman smiled, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp for a human mouth. I am the first, the original, the one they named their legends after. She tapped her walking stick on the deck, and the metal floor rippled like water. As for how I got here, I walked, 1 foot in front of the other. The old ways are simple but effective. Vextora drew his weapon and fired in one smooth motion. The energy bolt passed through the old woman as if she were a hologram, striking the bulkhead behind her. Rude, she commented, seemingly unperturbed. My granddaughter said you have no manners. I see she was right. Granddaughter, Eleanor, though that's not her true name. The old woman stood, and somehow she seemed taller than should have been possible, her shadow stretching across the bridge like a living thing. Names have power, you see. True names especially. You killed children today, Commander. Human children. It was necessary, Vexer said, backing away despite himself. Your species refused vassalage. Examples had to be made. Oh, I understand. The old woman nodded, her voice suddenly sympathetic. Examples are important. They teach valuable lessons. Her smile widened, becoming something inhuman. That's why I'm here. To make an example of you. The ship shuddered violently, listing to one side. Warning klaxons blared. Orbital decay accelerating. Someone shouted, "We're being pulled into the atmosphere." Impossible, Vexer said yet again. Our mass negators should prevent any gravitational capture. Your technology is impressive, the old woman agreed, leaning on her staff. But mine is older. Much older. Born before stars burned and planets cooled. She made a gesture with one gnarled hand, and suddenly the bridge view screen showed the exterior of the ship, the inevitable conquest, pride of the hegemony fleet. A warship 2 kilometers long was being dragged toward Earth's atmosphere by what appeared to be chicken legs. Enormous, scaled chicken legs, dozens of them, had erupted from the planet's surface and now gripped the ship like a prize, pulling it inexorably downward. What is this? Vex Tora whispered, his mandibles slack with shock. This is what happens when you threaten what is mine, the old woman said, her voice no longer frail but resonant with power. This is what happens when you spill innocent blood on ancient ground. This is what happens when you wake me from my long sleep. She approached Vex Tora, and despite his training, despite his armor, despite his weapons, he found himself unable to move. I am Baba Yaga, little insect, mother of witches, guardian of the old ways. And you have made a terrible, terrible mistake. Outside, the atmosphere was beginning to glow around the ship's hull as it descended. Heat warnings blared across every console. Your ship will make a lovely new house for me, the old woman, Baba Yaga, said conversationally. After I've cleaned out the vermin, of course. She tapped her staff on the deck again. But first, there's the matter of the debt you owe. Blood for blood. Life for life. We can negotiate, Vexer said quickly. The hegemony has vast resources. Whatever you want. What I want, Baba Yaga cut him off, is for you to understand the mistake you made. Not just attacking Earth. Plenty have tried that. No, your mistake was assuming that humans are what they appear to be. Her smile was like a scar across her face. We wear our humanity like you wear that armor, Commander. Something we put on because it's useful, because it protects what's underneath. The ship shuddered again, more violently. Hull breach warnings joined the cacophony of alarms. I'll give you and your crew a sporting chance, Baba Yaga said, tapping her staff a third time. More than you gave those children. When your ship crashes, and it will crash, any who survive may flee back to your hegemony. Tell them what you found on Earth. Tell them about the mothers you angered. Tell them what happens to those who harm our young. She began to fade, becoming translucent. And tell them we'll be watching. Always watching. With that, she vanished completely, leaving behind only the echo of her laughter and the faint smell of forest loam and wood smoke. Commander Vex Tora stared at the empty space where she had been, then at the view screen showing his mighty warship being dragged to its doom by impossible mythological appendages. All hands, he said quietly into the shipwide communication system. Prepare for impact. As the inevitable conquest began to break apart in Earth's upper atmosphere, as evacuation pods jettisoned in desperate arcs, as the chicken-legged structures continued their implacable grip, Vex Tora had a single crystal-clear thought. The hegemony had made a grave miscalculation. Humanity wasn't a primitive species ripe for subjugation. They were something else entirely, something ancient, something powerful, something that had been sleeping until the hegemony was foolish enough to wake it up. And if he survived to return to the hegemony, he would deliver Baba Yaga's message word for word, not out of loyalty to her, but out of terror of what would happen if he didn't. Because if there was one lesson the hegemony needed to learn about humans, it was this: never, ever harm their children.